the lead agent came out and looked at me, and I'm in uniform with the stars on my collar and everything all polished up. And he looked at that. He said, "Hey, the boss doesn't want to see you out here." And I looked at that agent and I said, "He's not my boss."
Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Podcast US. This is one of the world's biggest gun talk programs, and I'm your host, Brent Wheat. Appreciate you joining us. And my guest, right out of the gate, I called an old friend, my oldest friend, and we talked about something.
Can we call that longest friend as opposed to oldest? Because Roy is older than me.
Okay, that's true. That's true. But anyway, for today's show, I called up Ken Campbell, and he is sitting in the hot seat. He is, of course, the CEO of Gunsight Academy, and we all know what he's going to say when we get done here. But there's method to my madness. But anyway, Ken, welcome back to the show, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Well, at least I don't go, "Let's go Brandon" anymore.
Wow. Well,
I appreciate being here. Yeah. Brent and I, for those of you that have don't know us, we've been friends since we both had more hair, dark hair, and regular mustaches.
I was going to say at some point, I was going to mention this is going to be the mustache show. Yeah. If you're listening, you need to go over to YouTube and we've got some serious facial hair going. And the funny thing was, Ken, last time I was out there and I got out of the shuttle and you were picking me up, I didn't realize you'd kind of grown yours back out. So I'm sure at some point somebody's going, it's either copying each other. Well, no, it's just great minds think alike.
I got a picture here on my desk underneath the glass from 93 when I had a dark curly mustache, and I could tell you why I kept that off, but that would involve a story with Sheriff Hudson, and this is a family audience, and I really can't get into that story right now.
I was going to say, you rocked the handlebar and mustache wax when nobody did it.
Yeah, well, I said it was my midlife crisis.
No, I don't think we were even that old at that point. But anyway, I called Ken because besides being old friends and we were baby cops together, we've had a few relevant experiences in our topic today, which is we're talking about the incident that happened now almost a week ago at the White House Correspondents Dinner. I think everybody pretty much knows at this point that a nutbag decided to commit another act of political violence, and
Brent, he was a Democrat. Okay, I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, he stormed the event with several guns and knives, and apparently, from what I'm reading, he decided at the end that he kind of gave up. But the reason we're talking about this, aside from just the fact that we've got some experience in running major events, planning events, being part of things clear up and to guarding ex-presidents, I thought it was interesting to read some of the media folks. Yeah, those ones that were crouched on the ground hiding, a lot of them are saying, "Oh, security didn't work and we were scared." And I thought I'm going to call Ken and we're going to talk about how event security really works. So right out of the gate, the first question is pretty straightforward, but I'd like to hear your take on it. What we try to tell folks is if you get away from rainbows and unicorns and whatever else fantasy world you live in, there really is no perfect security and you're never really safe, right?
You are the first responder. Okay, where you are. Anywhere in this world, you are the first responder. As good as many federal, state, local agencies are, personal security details, and so on, you're the first responder. So you've got to be alert, aware, and so on of your surroundings. But I can't imagine an event like this that was not I forget what the term is, a national security declaration. So there's multiple agencies, so multiple layers of supervisors. And
I pretty much saw every alphabet soup agency, including some I had to look up. Everybody was there.
Yeah. So I can't imagine trying to get all that coordinated, even though they work together regularly and they're pros at what they do. Anything I say here is not demeaning to our friends with the FBI, the Secret Service. I'm sure there were DOD police there, and the National Guard, and Metropolitan DC Police, and who knows what all's there. And it's easy for us, from me 2,000 miles away. And I'm basing everything on these little video snippets that I've seen in the mainstream media and on social media. So we're basing it that, and this one's more where normally I say the 72-hour rule before you make comments on something, and it's been more than that, but there's a lot of moving parts in this. So this one's going to be a little longer than the 72-hour rule till things come out. Other than I do not think Donald Trump set it up to enhance his ballroom construction.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But let's get to the meat of this and kind of my thesis to this entire show, which is security didn't fail, security worked.
It did.
And for folks that don't understand how event security typically works, it operates on a series of rings, and there's an outer ring, a middle ring, and an inner ring. And we're not giving away anything that hasn't already been even in the popular press, but the idea is that you got to cross all three of those rings before you can get to the protected person and do something stupid or horrible. And in this case, apparently the guy crossed that first ring and didn't make it to ring number 2 before he was stopped. So in my book, the way he attacked it was somewhat novel compared to some other things we've seen, but the system worked exactly as it was intended to. I don't think there's any question there, but again, we've seen a lot of folks, commenters, saying that it was a horrible security failure. So your thoughts on that when you see the news, Ken?
First off, the venue, it's a hotel. So you've got that creates security problems because you got people coming and going. You can't just shut the hotel off and tell the guests, I know you paid $450 a night for your room, but you can't go
Too
there.
Bad.
So he's a guest in the hotel. Fortunately, we live in a country where there aren't magnetometers just to go into a public building like that. So he was able to bring in what appears to be a Mossberg shotgun or a Maverick and some sort of a 1911 pistol and some knives. So then, again, some of the pictures I've seen, he's dressed appropriately. And he comes downstairs in the hotel and then just takes off like a jackrabbit through an outer ring into the second ring and goes past guys. I've seen where one agent actually draws. I don't think he fires, but also in Rule 4, be sure your target and what's beyond it. There's some other agents or officers there in the background. I'm not sure he had a shot that he would have felt comfortable in taking. And then they got him stopped there at that ring. In the meantime, the agents and security details inside the final perimeter did what they did by taking the vice president out, stepping up in front of the president and the first lady, and getting people out. So I don't think it was a failure there. Now, by the grace of God, it wasn't an explosive device because that would have changed things altogether also. But still, he never made it into the ballroom.
Yeah. And I want to point out to the officers, the agents, the security people that were there, it doesn't appear, and again, this is all speculative, but it doesn't appear any of them took a shot. And I've seen people, well, why is that? Because of just what you said. Imagine, it looks like the guys he ran past, the direction they were shooting would have been right into the ballroom. It would have been one thing to take down the bad guy, but taking down 4 or 5 or 6 VIPs, including one of the protectees, would have been even worse. So I have to commend the guys and gals that were there. They were ready to shoot, but it appeared to me they all decided to check fire because they didn't have a clear, safe shot on this guy. And it appears that he decided he had had enough at that point. But it's something to, you're primed and you're ready and I've got to do something, but oh, wait, I've got innocence downrange.
You've also gotten, I've heard some people say that, well, this guy ran right by several of those agents. Well, he did at a full sprint. But there's also a thing called selective attention. Yeah, there's a scientific principle behind it, and I don't remember it, but it's you don't see what you don't expect to see.
Yeah.
So they're not really expecting to see some guy sprinting through in a suit, carrying a shotgun, even though that's their job to watch for that. And they may have gotten into a little more relaxed mode. We use the color code here at Gunsight: white, yellow, orange, and red. They clearly should have been in orange, but easy for us to say. They've gotten everybody in the ballroom, and so they're not having to deal with as many folks. But the point is, the guy failed. And I don't think it was luck that failed. I think it's because of the rings of security they had and what all he had to go through. And those are all good things. And again, the bigger the events you and I dealt with were on a much smaller scale. And it was one or two agencies, or three if we count Secret Service when they'd come in. So I wouldn't have felt uncomfortable. Those people in the ballroom, many of them are used to being coddled. They're the White House press, other than when the White House press secretary or the president's handed them their butt because of the questions they ask. They're fairly well coddled, and they aren't out facing miscreants or just ugly people. And I don't mean physical looks. I just mean people that are mentally ugly.
Yeah. Well, shifting to the inside, you pointed that out earlier. I got to say, I've watched the videos over and over and over, and I am, from the standpoint of somebody that's planned events like this, like you said, Ken, and you've done the same thing. I cannot imagine having, I'm just guesstimating, 20 at least different agencies. And you got to think, you've got Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, who is being protected by his detail, which is Department of Defense. You got the secrets, as we call them, protecting the president, vice president. You've probably got diplomatic security service. You've got
Capitol Police.
Capitol Police. Yeah, I mean, there's all these folks. That is an absolute worst case scenario because you've got, I don't know, let's say 30 or 40 people who all have security, and security is concerned with getting their person off the X, as we've talked about. So all of them are trying to get their people out. And obviously the president, vice president, they get priority there.
First dibs.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think, first dibs. I can't imagine that it didn't turn into, there's a term that starts with cluster, and I am amazed at how well the various security teams and professionals got their protectees either down and out or around without looking like, as we used to say, stupid human tricks.
There was a lot of good gun handling displayed there. Everything, we call it the hook. It's where you bring your pistol out of the holster and you hook your thumb on your pistol. That way, as you're moving quickly, you aren't waving your pistol around inadvertently, right? There's a lot of hook being used. I saw some DSM safety banners. I bought those.
Wow.
I bought those for all my deputies when I was still sheriff. I still carry them around. It's a reflective banner that says sheriff, police. You can get them to say church security or armed citizen. The owner's a Gunsight grad too, which is kind of cool, but that's a side note. But I saw several of those in place, so it readily identifies. It's just a banner. It's like a Miss America banner that you can. It's a pouch you pull up over your shoulder, so it's clear. So if you're moving with your person you're protecting, it's clearly identified who you are. So I saw those in place. I saw everybody with straight trigger fingers, whether they were with a pistol, with an SMG, with whatever, an M4. Lots and lots of straight trigger fingers there with the plainclothes folks, as well as then the uniformed securities that were there. The president's protective detail that comes out. There's a lot of training involved, which goes back to getting their person out too. There was a plan, I'm sure, on which way they were supposed to go, and a backup plan, and a backup to the backup, and they all seem to follow it.
Yeah. Well, and imagine, like you said, Ken, we've organized 2 or 3, 4 agencies maybe that, may I point out, a lot of times didn't have communication or had very round robin communication. I imagine in this situation, even though a lot of the agents were federal. I'm sure there was some who weren't. I can't imagine trying to coordinate, as you said, that, okay, plan A for you is go that way, plan A for you is go that way, on top of all this stuff. I just can't imagine. I'm sure there was more confusion than what it looked like, but I thought
radio
overall, yeah.
The radio comms where they're going to have a central control room that's supposed to coordinate all that.
Yeah. And something we didn't talk about, but going back to triggering, as we saw, one of the folks that we call the counter ambush people, the gentlemen in body armor and helmets with long guns, the first thing you really notice is there's guys in tuxedos coming out, but the guy with the heavy gear comes out and just stands in front of the dais. And basically his job is to kind of be a body bunker and also engage any threat. And my point I was trying to make, though, is as far as I've heard, nobody said, oh, there's a shooter out there. People just heard gunshots and decided it's time to act. Yeah. And again, we talk about that a lot. They don't rise to
the occasion. They default to their level of training. And that's what it appeared to me.
Yeah. But think about that from a CCW carrier standpoint. We talk about that idea of people see things all the time and they don't react to them. And Roy and I talked about this in a podcast just a couple episodes ago of a lot of folks, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what most people do. And even trained professionals sometimes can freeze or hesitate because imagine you're behind the president and the vice president, and I forget all those VIPs, and you think you hear gunshots, but what if you were wrong? Because the president himself said he thought it was a tray clattered down. Can you imagine the embarrassment that would cause if you come running out there, I've got this, and then you realize, oh, he dropped the creamer, So it's not as
funny balance.
It is not as simple as it looks, and these guys and gals have to be on point about that, and they have to keep their wits about them and take everything into account and take nothing for granted.
You also noticed there were a lot of protected folks that jumped up from the tables that were agents dressed in their tuxedos, and they were not looking like agents. And again, that's part of their plan, to have them planted throughout and to be able to respond from the floor.
Yeah. Exactly.
And some of those jumped up also on the in front of the president there, and they're just wearing their tuxes, but that's what they are. They're the human shield till the heavy body armor guys stepped in. One guy even straddles the table when he comes in because his job is to take that bullet.
Yep. And again, we all saw the action on the dais, but out in the audience, there's all kinds of people. And I would even guess probably a few of the higher end press folks probably have some kind of security with them. Whether they need it or not, who knows? But, high value people, I know when they go places, a lot of times, network anchors and things like that are hard to replace. They'll have details, if not just for that event, but for, whenever they're out and about among us unwashed masses. But again, there was so many moving parts, and it was really gratifying to see these folks. They took care of business, and there wasn't a lot of confusion. And again, I have a hard time seeing the failure in all this. And you pointed it out already. Guarantee you there's a whole book of, okay, this didn't happen. He didn't do this. She didn't go here. We never made this radio call. But overall, the system worked.
Everybody survived.
Everybody survived, and it seemed to work.
So then you go back to your after action, your hot wash. You see what did we do good? What did we not do good? How can we do this better? What do we modify for the next time? And you move forward on it. The windshield's bigger than the rear view mirror. That's one of the sayings we use. So you keep looking out that windshield, but you use that rear view mirror to see where you were and what we can do to make going forward better. And I think that's what they did. I'll tell you a quick, funny protective detail story. I was just at the NRA annual meeting in Houston, a couple weeks ago, and I'm down on Media Row because I'm trying to get podcasts and so on, and very, very clearly a protective detail around this guy. Well, hell, I'm not shy, so I go up, use my former title. Hi, Sheriff Ken Campbell. Who's the detail for? Oh, this guy right here. I said, okay. Who's that? And he looked at me, goes, the Attorney General. And I said, of Texas? And he looked at me, he goes, no, of the United States. And I said, oh, shame on me. He goes, that's why he's here. He's only been on the job 2 weeks. He's acting. Nobody knows who he is. So,
wow.
But he had a good, I visited with some of his guys around him and so on. But it's like, oops.
Well, okay, you've opened the door, and now it's time for, as we refer to them as operational debriefs. In other words, war stories and BS tales. And okay, the first one I have to tell, and this one may not be something you'll laugh at, but I'm proud to say I was within arm's reach of a former president, guarded him, got to see all the sides of that and plan. You got thrown out of backstage.
Well, no, I refused to leave because I was the sheriff.
They tried to throw you out of backstage.
They tried to throw me out. The lead agent came out and looked at me, and I'm in uniform with the stars on my collar and everything all polished up, and my chief deputy was with me. And he looked at that. He said, hey, the boss doesn't want to see you out here. Made my chief pretty mad. He said, fine, I'm going to the parking lot. And I looked at that agent, and I said, he's not my boss. And I stayed there just to spite him. And again, it's called the Clio. I'm the chief law enforcement officer. As far as I'm concerned, it was my county, and we were the main support agency. Our guys brought them in from the interstate. What I really wanted to do was get on the radio and say, hey, when they go to leave, just let them find their own way back.
Exactly. You imagine they end up down on the trailer court. Hey, this is scary.
So, that was an interesting evening in there. But boy, the guy had a dynamic personality.
It was President Clinton.
Yeah. He worked that by crack. That's when Hillary was running for president. Her campaign still owes Boone County, Indiana, money for the overtime. They never paid us. So,
go figure.
My shocked face here.
I'll tell you, I've heard, and I just heard this the other day on a podcast, is about. This is totally off topic, but President Clinton has this weird charisma that he just has people eating out of his hand. And our county is very, becoming Republican. Less so, but very Republican, very conservative. And I saw people who, if you told them I'm a Democrat, old ladies that would have punched you in the mouth for saying that, they were ready to have his babies right there in that gymnasium. The guy is just, the charisma is
just exponential.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was the first time in my life I ever understood how you can get crowds of people to do horrible things. Because if he had said, light the torches, let's go kill this group or that group or burn the city, people would have done it. And it was weird and frightening. But we got to guard him. And I will also mention he had visitors backstage because I had to approve those coming through the. Okay. Anyway. So, didn't you guard Miss America or something? Or I was sheriff then, and then you and I both come out of the SWAT team, special response team, and I kept an active hand because when I was elected sheriff, I could no longer be team commander. But I stayed in an active role, and I trained with the guys and did PT with them and so on. So anyway, Katie Stam was her name, and she was Miss Indiana, and she won Miss America. So they had to do a formal handover of the crown to a new Miss Indiana. So we had Katie Stam and 10 or 12 other Miss Iowas, Nebraskas, and so on, plus the new Miss Indiana, plus several of that court. But we were detailed to Katie Stam and then her court because I had no idea on this. Now, let me back up here. It's shame on me. I had this impression of they'd just be pretty girls that couldn't hold a conversation. I'm wrong. I'm telling you, serve the crow, I'll eat it. They were all very smart, very nice, very pleasant young women to talk to. And Katie Stam was especially. So we were detailed to them, and apparently they have what they call creepers. And they're people that just follow them around, and we were to kind of keep them away. So we took care of her, moved her around. And a matter of fact, at one of the venues that they went to, and we were in plain clothes then, but it was clear they were all cops. I'm wearing the old 511 shoot me first vest, right? And this guy keeps encroaching on the space, and I'm not moving. And I said it to him, "You are in my space." And he got this look on his face. "Is your space, huh?"
And I said, yeah, you're in my space. Step away. And he stepped in again. And there's a spot right here, this clavicle notch. And, if you're very discreet and you're standing with your hands up like this, you come out real quick and take these 2 fingers and shove it right in that clavicle notch, bring your hand back down. Well, darn if he didn't start choking and coughing just suddenly out of the blue. And then one of the handlers for this group of ladies said, oh, yeah, that's one of the creepers. I'm like, did you not think you were supposed to say that guy right there?
That would have been helpful.
So, but that was a fun detail working with them. And again, I learned that they are very educated, very, very nice young women, and shame on me for thinking they weren't.
Yeah. Well, we also had, I think any cop across the country has had similar experiences of not only special events, parades, and celebrations, but I think we told the story before. We were actually kind of the genesis of our multi-agency SWAT team because we had gone to FBI sniper school, a regional sniper school, and we came back.
Scenic Camp Atterbury.
Scenic Camp Atterbury. Back then, nothing was going on except the Navy SEALs did some of their training there. Yeah. But we were having a big time national biker trial. And did you know he's out? That's total aside. And this, he's out.
He did his time.
He did his time, but and that was a very smart guy, but he was the national enforcer for a major motorcycle group, and we were having a trial. And so his own people were trying to kill him. The other gangs were trying to kill him. I don't know. Maybe the CIA was too. I don't know. But the threat board was lit up. So we had to buckle down the courthouse. And as young snot noses, fresh with our wood-stocked blued rifles from our sniper school, we said, well, we can do high ground security. And you know what? That was one of the more fun and memorable weeks of my entire life. Between we scared a couple of the ladies that work in the courthouse because they weren't expecting folks peering in their window, and it's not like we were creeping on them. It's just, well, what's this window? And she saw me, I saw her. We both screamed. It was something. And then
lived on the courthouse roof too. That would keep coming around.
Yes. But I will say that was the first time I ever had the experience. We've talked about this is there was a gentleman that I think my trigger, we'd measured at 5.5 pounds. I was 3 pounds into it. Yep. If that guy had brought anything out, but go ahead and I won't get to the punchline, even though I almost got there.
As a sniper detail on the roof of the courthouse. And so we'd come in several hours early just to start watching and seeing who was there and so on. Remember the guy with the binoculars that kept looking at us?
Yeah.
We'd look back at him and finally you looked at him and he went... and we never saw him again. He realized he shouldn't be doing that. So we were watching the crowd, and they were bringing the defendant in different directions. They'd bring him in, they'd walk him over, they'd put him in a car, drive him around the block, so they weren't going in the same doors all the time. And they'd let us know how he was coming in, and we'd been watching this suspicious guy down on the east side of the courthouse in a cheap suit, tried to kind of look like an attorney, but he just, it's that
he just
cop sense.
Yeah.
Just didn't look right. And we're trying to tell the guys as they're walking the defendant over. And of course, they're not paying attention to the radio. And we're trying to tell them. And you called me over. So now we're both focused on this guy. And he got right up there to him, and his hand kept going here. And you and I, the argument would have been who pressed the trigger first. On it. But he opted out of doing anything. And then he just disappeared like a puff of smoke. So we don't know. Maybe he was just a guy there that happened to be going in for his divorce hearing or something and wearing a cheap suit, or I don't know. But everything went well. The courthouse didn't get blown up. Nobody got hurt. Nobody escaped. We all lived happily ever after. We got some great tales, and our names are still scratched, maybe on the inside of the rotunda.
Yes,
as a sniper team. The statute of limitation has far run on that.
Yeah. You know what? I'm doing some work with our county now as a retiree. And one of these days, I'm going to get up there and take some pictures of our signatures. So that'll be a fun full circle moment. But anyway, back to event security. The whole, did security fail? I say not at all.
Yeah.
A failure would have been had he gotten close, and even then, as we discussed, there's lots of folks who plan for that and train for that every day, and these
That's
folks
what we do every day.
Exactly. And I will say though that the difference between Butler, PA, and the other night was striking. Not that, I mean, that's a different topic, and we've talked about it. But the way things were handled then versus now, just pretty much night and day difference, wouldn't you say?
Yes, without fail. It was coordinated. The agents and an officer seemed to be very strong in what they were doing, knew what they were doing, and it was impressive. And I'll tell you something else that I think is kind of neat is how President Trump reacted to it all. Now, granted, this is what the third attempt on him, so he's kind of like, been there, done that type thing.
Yeah,
but he reacted strongly to it. They left, and they say, well, no, we're going to go back in and have dinner. No, sir, we can't. Yeah, we are. And finally they said, we cannot. We don't know that it was a lone wolf. But 2 hours later, he goes back to the Oval Office, has his team surrounding him. And then 2 hours later, he's doing a press conference. So the country knew things were still on track and he was okay and everybody was okay. And whether you like him or not, I really don't care whether you like him or not. Point is, he showed a strong leader. And I don't think the last president could have done that.
Exactly.
I'll take politics out of it. I don't think he was capable of doing that.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about it. I wasn't going to go down this road, but there was a writer, and I believe for the Detroit Free Press, I think, and I don't remember her name, but she wrote a pretty good article that you can find it online. And I think it's behind a paywall most places, but I found it. And but she talked about how she was there and she was amazed at. She said it was men mostly. So that was her words.
But they don't. But the women blend in.
Yeah,
the women protective detail, they just blend in more so than the men do.
But she was amazed at the guys, and she knew some of them who were, war correspondents, former military, former law enforcement, but just guys in general. And I'll use that term loosely to include any prepared American who is not cowed by terrorists. She was amazed that they stood up, and it was just this side of kind of like. Okay, now we're going to do something. You and block that and go here and it was interesting her awe at seeing people do that who didn't have a specific duty. They just did it because that's what they are. And to me,
welcome,
whether it's a guy or a gal. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think the audience of our podcast, the folks that attend Gunsight Academy, everybody we talk to, that's the kind of folks that they are and they strive to be. And I just thought it was interesting to see somebody who I'm guessing her politics are completely different than mine, but she was just truly in awe that, I think it was the first time a lot of these folks had direct, so to speak, threats on their lives. And that's a moment that you start thinking about things.
Right.
Because I saw several stories about that too. Right.
Well, let me throw it in this way, and I'm not doing this to promote Gunsight, okay? But we started seeing, I'm not. The example here is that we started seeing more and more clients that were non-traditional gun owners. And we changed our format a little bit. We added a class. Right now it's called Day Zero. We're going to market it with a different name later on with pistols and then with carbines, because people are recognizing the world's not the place they thought it once was. It's not 1970s when we grew up, or 80s or whatever. It's a different place with defund the police and the riots and these crazies that are out there. So they had to learn to defend themselves. So we're seeing more and more of that crowd, and they're not the traditional gun owners, not the traditional thinkers that we've had in the past. So that particular correspondent may now have a life-altering experience and may want to think about getting their own training somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and not to go down because this is a whole nother topic, but I know you've had several reporters at Gunsight specifically. I think most of them kind of wanted to maybe do a hit piece, so to speak, but you've definitely had a few that have walked away with a whole new appreciation that, wow, maybe this is something.
We vetted a group from France, and we didn't vet them properly enough. It was a hit piece. It really was. Explained on the story, it told how I was wrong, that there is not more gun violence in Mexico than there is in the U.S., even though Mexico has strong gun laws. And so that was about the highlight of the whole piece. But we'll get some folks that come in that are, again, not traditional gun owners. They're more of the really strong liberal mindset.
Yeah.
But then they've come to a recognition we need to learn to protect ourselves because things like this dinner happens. Yeah. And you just may have been in the lobby of the hotel, right? You're there sightseeing.
Yeah.
So they need to learn to be able to protect themselves and their families. And we're seeing more and more of those. And that's an opportunity for those of us in this audience. They're thinking this way. But this gives us a chance to make these other folks realize we put our pants on the same way as they do, and we're not what some of the mainstream media portrays us to be. And
exactly.
That's okay.
Yep. That is absolutely okay, and a great place to kind of draw a conclusion on this. And of course, we have to go there. Now I'm going to turn you loose, Ken. Well, tell me about Gunsight.
I can do that. And let me dovetail that in. We are in consultation, past consultations. We're trying to sort out the dates for maybe yet this year, but certainly 2027 with our friend Steve Tarani, who has he's a longtime Gunsight range master, who has multiple experience in executive protection, and also
including guarding Trump.
And then another gentleman by the name of Wayne Black and Associates, who comes from that world. And we're going to be doing an executive protection class here at Gunsight. You're going to have a 5-day prerequisite. That's called 250 pistol in order to take the class. But it's not so much for the United Healthcare executive, but it's what are you going to do to take care of your family when you're at whatever venue it is. So, because we've seen changes. But Gunsight is, get back to your original question, we're the world's oldest and largest privately owned firearms training academy. This is our 50th year of business. And it's not Gunsight 1976, 2026. That's an epitaph on a tombstone. It's Gunsight the first 50 years, because we're looking out that windshield as we're driving down the road. I had an instructor come in today. He was an instructor here at Gunsight from 1979 until 1991, and he had not been back since. He'd gone to work overseas for the companies he worked for, and he drove in and he's like, where am I? Because we've had so many changes here. And even if you've not been here in 6 months, with the buildings that are gone and the new buildings that are up, but we keep moving forward. And for the folks that say we're the Southwest Dinosaur League and we're FUDs and so on, you've never been here. You foolishly read the comments on the internet. And as our late friend Pat Rogers says, that's the disinformation cow path. Yeah. It is not the information superhighway.
Well, we occasionally get accused of being FUDs here on the Guns Podcast US, and we've embraced that. We're going to have a T-shirt out soon that says Lethal FUDs, and that came from one of our viewers.
Well, so I may buy one of those.
Excellent. Well, circling back to kind of the tail end of what we were talking about, I've never understood why preparedness and protecting others is considered a conservative / right-wing outlook. Yeah. I mean, folks on the left and liberals and progressives, they love their family as much as we do.
Yeah.
And they don't want to see them harmed. So I'm not sure why. So point being,
the vast majority of police are going to be there to try to help you in 7 to 12 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to take. So I go back to what I said 30 minutes ago. You are the first responder. You've got it, whether it's because the tornado's coming through, because there's the bad guy trying to knock at the door, or whatever it is, you're the first responder. You need to have a plan. You need to know how to change your own tires. You need to have a fire extinguisher. You need to know how to use it. All these silly things
that we talk about repeatedly on the Guns Podcast US and get, well, you're just a FUD. Well,
yeah. And I'm damn proud of it.
Exactly.
And I can take care of my family if I need to. And, I've got extra, well, how many trips have you and I taken, whether it's backpacking or the SHOT Show, and we've got extra water, we've got first aid, we've got guns and ammo, we've got...
Well, the story, and I think we did tell it before, was one of my favorites. We were all backpacking up to the top of Mount LeConte, which is the second highest mountain in eastern United States. And one of the ladies in our group, she sprained her ankle, hurt her ankle. We nearly got in a fist fight trying to... Everybody whipped out their first aid kits, and we were going to call for dust. It was almost comical that we were ready to do something, and she was like, I just need a bandage, okay?
The comical one, well, there's been several, was when the weather was so foul and blowing and sleet, and we took a wrong turn on the trail, and we finally get to this peak, and it's like, go back.
I actually said, the mountain is trying to kill us.
Yeah, where we missed a turn, and then we had to go across that one part of the trail where you hold on to the cable, and it was slick and icy, and I swear to goodness, my handprints are still in that steel cable from where I was gripping it, because we got the packs on and the wind blowing, but we drew down on the stump.
Yeah, or the turkey.
Yeah. But we were ready.
Done a few. Yeah, we were. Well, I was going to say, if you had slid off the side of the mountain, if that cable let loose, I would have been able to call in our grid coordinates, and I could have thrown like a splint over the side and hope maybe it landed near your body.
The only reason you'd have come try to get my body is because you wanted the stuff in my pack.
That's
you had already mentally split my gear.
Oh, yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Oh, goodness. Well, Ken Campbell, the CEO of Gunsight, it's always great to talk to you. We don't get to talk enough. And as we've often said, we know where each other's bodies are buried, and he knows the combination to my gun safe.
Yep, and you to my vault. So,
yeah. So we need to have another adventure soon. And now, by virtue of where we're at in life, I'll bring along a video camera, and people can actually see, do they embellish the truth thing. Or does it really,
I'm not doing this to rub
south?
Into you, because I know you'll get back there, because I know I'll be going back, and I'll try to take some video. I'm going on a black bear hunt. I'll be there next month up in northwest Canada. I know I'm not doing that but after you see my pictures, it'll be like, okay, we're going next year or whatever.
Yeah.
But
well, hopefully I can.
I'll be back in Indiana in July, because crass commercial message. We're doing a 3-day Gunsight pistol class at the Boone County, Indiana Sheriff's Office range, and Ken gets to come in off the bench and teach the class. I don't get to teach much anymore, and I miss that terribly. But that's okay. Just like you writing, you for a long time you weren't able to write as much, and I think you're getting back into that again.
Yeah.
So.
And remembering how much I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, it's great to catch up with you, Ken Campbell, and I'll be out at Gunsight one of these days, and I know you'll be back here, and we'll polish a few more lies and come up with a few more stories.
All right. Well, in the meantime, when are you coming to Gunsight?
As always. Well, thanks, Ken.